Hello, welcome to HR's role in lean implementation. I think you'll find this presentation very informative and it will help you make your company very successful in lean implementation within your organization. What I want to do is I want to take you through the general principles of lean and the role that HR will be playing in each one of those principles. So let's start off with lean philosophy. The lean philosophy is something that has to get portrayed throughout the organization, and it has to be given from the top down. So the person that's going to be communicating and coordinating the communication is going to be the HR professional in the organization. So you're going to have to make sure that you know what's going on with lean. You're going to have to know your audience, and you're going to have to put forth the effort of putting people through various communication trains so that they can understand what lean is all about. You need to be training and developing people in lean and what's in it for them. The philosophy of lean is here to stay. It's not the flavor of the month. And so you'll find yourself involved in coordinating all the communication that's going to be involved in getting the information out to the individuals within your organization. You also want to be able to support that with various metrics, visual communications. A lot of times you're going to have to put in various boards that's going to show where we are, what we're doing, where we're going, and keeping things organized so that people have continuing information on information boards. One of the things I think is going to be important if you do put up information boards is that you're going to have to keep them updated. Nothing's worse than having an information board up that doesn't have the current information. And you also, when you put information boards up, you oftentimes want to use some sort of visual communication relative to just verbiage. You want to use pie charts, you want to use bar charts, you want to use those types of things. So HR will be very much involved in coordinating the communication of the philosophy throughout the organization. You also, one of the principles is talking about creative flow. You want to create a continuous flow throughout the organization. And so when you think about that, where does HR fit into the continuous flow? Well, if you want continuous flow, what you're going to need people that are properly staffed. So you're going to have to know the numbers of the staffing levels that you're going to need. You're going to have to make sure that the workloads are balanced out so that you have a proper flow of the process and the employees are properly staffed in that area. You're going to have to make sure that you have the proper skills identified so that when you come to training and developing an employee to move into another position, that there's going to be a skill set that they're going to have. Oftentimes you have to maintain a flexible workforce. And this is going to involve identifying the skills. It's going to involve in rotating people and movement throughout the organization. So that's going to be a key factor, and it falls right into the bailiwick of HR. Also, when you identify the job functions, it's going to be important that the design of these job functions are essential. Because when you get into the job analysis, what you're going to find in the job analysis is that you're going to have possibly different compensation packages or different pay grades of these various other functions. So just think about it. If you want to move somebody into another position, and that position pays more than what they're currently making, you would think that an employee that's going to be moving into that next position is wanting to have that extra pay. So it's going to be important that the compensation packages are organized. And so when you start looking at job analysis and job functions, it's not so much the more they make, the more they make. It's going to be the more they know is the more they make. I can tell you a situation I had in a company that when we implemented lean, we had 55 classifications in that. And of that 55 classification, we had 26 job pay grades. Those pay grades were preventing us from moving people around and having a flexible workforce. So what we ended up doing is we went in, combined several jobs that needed to be combined. We balanced out work functions, and we reduced those 55 pay classifications down to 12 with 5 pay grades. Therefore, we were able to move everybody around in different positions that needed to be moved around and did not cause a compensation issue at all. Take steps to prevent overproduction. You want to ensure that you have enough trained people that are going to be working in the various production areas so that you don't have overproduction in some areas and less production in other areas. So when it comes to job identification, you want to make sure that the variable compensation levels that you might have in there are adequate. And when I say variable compensation, I'm not talking about base compensation. I'm talking about your variable compensation that incents people to work harder or make more product. In doing that, one of the things you got to make sure of is that you don't incent the people to overproduce. So let's say that you're in a manufacturing environment and you produce a product, and the product is that the more you make, meaning that you have possibly a piece rate system. That piece rate system is going to say, I don't care if the more you make is going to be sitting in the warehouse and I don't need it, I'm still going to pay you for making more. That if you have that type of system, that has to change, and you have to have more of a key performance indicator classifications so that the employees are working as a team and cross-functional lines. Next, I want to talk about improving corporate culture. One of the things about the corporate culture is you have to make sure that the people that you are changing with the lean operation are ingrained in the culture. They're going to respect the people, they're going to work as teams, they're going to trust people. And to do that, you have to have consistent policies and practices for HR. And you're going to find yourself being a champion for the employees, because what's going to happen with the employees is they're going to see change coming about, and change isn't easy. A lot of times employees are going to be concerned about, what's in it for me and what's going to happen to my job. And so you're going to have to get the people to understand that change is coming, and lean implementation is going to be for the better, and there is something good for them in the process. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have an issue with your employees not understanding and accepting. And I can tell you that it's important that they understand and accept, because if they don't understand and accept, then you have problems with implementing things any further. You're also going to have situations where you're going to have people that understand it, but just simply won't accept it. They're maybe old school, they just don't like change. This is extremely important when it comes to your supervisors and managers, because those people are going to be on the front line, and they're going to be carrying the message to the individuals out in your organization. And if they don't accept it, then you have a problem. I was at a meeting one time at another company, and the CEO that was talking to us explained to us that we need to make sure that the people understand, because if you don't, you need to change the people, or you change the people. And I thought that was kind of a comical comment, but what he was referring to was change the people means you want to change the mindset. You want to get them on your side. You want to get them on your team. You need to change the people, and you do that by getting them to understand and getting them to accept. Back to the situation where you have the people that understand it but just won't accept it, and that's the other part of it. You either change the people, they understand it and accept it, or they understand it and they don't accept it, and then you change the people. Unfortunately, you'll find some of that. Those people will be like a cancer within your organization. It'll be a tough situation, but you're going to have to deal with it. And you're going to have to deal with it in a sensitive nature, because oftentimes employees that go through change are concerned about, am I going to lose my job? What's going to happen? So if they find people that are getting terminated relative to lean coming into the organization, that could create a big problem for you moving forward. So whatever you do, that should be a last resort, but if you have to do it, you better do it very delicately. Standardized tasks. Again, lean talks about standardizing tasks. One of the things about standardizing tasks is that everybody is going to be doing things the same. And it's important because when you have people moving into different areas and you want a flexible workforce and you want people to be able to move around, one of the things you're going to have to do is have standard tasks so you can flatten out that learning curve when people are moving from one job to the other job. And if it's not standardized, then your learning curve is going to be pretty steep and not as flat. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you get the best practices when it comes to standardizing the work. When you want to standardize the work, one of the things that is important is to make sure the employee is involved, because who knows the job better than the employee? I mean, so how would you feel if somebody came into your organization and started changing things around, telling you how to do your job? I was in a conference one time and there was an exercise going on. And one of the things they had us do was take out our billfolds or our wallets, purses, or what have you, and take a look at our money. And they said, okay, we're going to standardize things by you putting big bills first and down to the little bills last. And everybody seemed okay with standardizing the way their money was structured. The next step that they wanted us to do was take our billfold or our wallets, purses, and they wanted us to hand it over to the person beside us, and they were going to organize our money for us. Well, as soon as I said that, your first reaction was, I didn't want to pass my stuff over to somebody that I didn't know, or that did not necessarily want to do things the way I'm used to doing it. So it's definitely needing to get the employee involved in the standardized work. Next, one of the key principles is implementing visual communications. Visual communications is extremely important, and I would say that HR needs to take the responsibility for that, not only out of your area into the rest of the company, but in your own area as well. So one of the things about visual communications is you're going to have to make sure that the employees are informed and up to date and kept up to date on all the activities that are going on with Lean. Visual communications are strongly suggested on making sure that things are connected. It's the cornerstone of Lean, and so therefore when you start your communication out within the organization, you're going to have to make sure that you step up and do the visual communications in the company as well as within your own department. Next principle is passing on Lean concepts. One of the things that's important is you got to pass on Lean concepts to the next person. And I think it's important that you think about that, because if you don't, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to have these pockets of employees that are all on board with Lean, and then you're going to have these people that aren't on board with Lean or that want to be on board with Lean but just don't know how to get on board with Lean. And so you're going to have these various levels of employees within the organization. So one of the things is every opportunity that you have is to take an opportunity to pass on Lean concepts throughout your organization. It's better to try to use real life example, and I would suggest maybe even trying to coordinate some training sessions for the individuals relative to the concepts. One of the things I always did when I had my subordinates working for me is when they would come with a problem, one of the things I tried to do was use one of the Lean techniques by saying, okay, what is the current situation? What's the current state? What is the future state? And then you want to look at the gap. The gap would be, what's the difference between the current state and the future state? Then you want to analyze the gap, and then you say, what are you doing about it? So every time I had an opportunity to use that, when an employee would bring a problem, I would go through those steps of problem solving that would reinforce the Lean concepts throughout my department. Develop team members, that's another principle. Team members, you not only develop them individually, which is important, but you develop them to work as a team. I think you have to teach people to work as teams. And oftentimes in an organization, contrary to the Lean philosophy, organizations are more departmentalized. By being departmentalized, it means that they don't necessarily see cross-functional items, and they're not seeing end-to-end of the process. So cross-functional is extremely important to be involved. So when you're developing teams, you want to develop teams that are cross-functional, and making them cross-functional, you therefore, when it comes to training, they have to be trained to understand not only their own areas, but the various areas up and down the value stream. Respect all stakeholders. That's one of the key concepts of Lean. You want to build sustainable teams. You want to make sure that everybody is respected. And I can tell you that if you do not have respect, you're not going to have trust. And I think it's important from the HR perspective to develop that trust, that you have consistent HR policies and procedures and make sure that they're consistently applied throughout your organization, or that trust and the respect will be hard to come by. So I'm suggesting that you take a look at that. And also, if you don't already have a code of conduct policy, you need to get one so everybody knows what the rules are, what the reasonable rules of conduct are supposed to be, and follow them accordingly. Also, from an HR perspective, if you have people that are not following those codes of conduct, then it's going to be your responsibility to deal with those situations and correct them as necessary. You also want to make sure that all this information is processed not only through the employees within your organization and the stakeholders in there, your outside partners and suppliers, they're your stakeholders as well. So you want to coordinate that whole process end to end, that respect and trust has to go throughout the whole organization and outside the organization. Always look for ways to make improvements. That's one of the things I think is important. You've got to instill within your employees that they're always looking for improvements. It's a continuous improvement process. So you want to make sure that they have it in their blood. One of the ways you can do that is take employees on the gimbal walks. That way they can see various areas, see problems identified, and move forward. You also want to make sure that you have a proper culture for this, so that when you're going on the gimbal walks, people are participating within the Gimbal Walks so that they know how things are supposed to be going throughout their organization, not necessarily in their department. Implement change quickly. One of the things you want to do when you implement a change is you want to implement a change quickly. Implementing change quickly means that you're going to not just do a short-term one, you want to do it quickly after everything is thought through and produced into the direction you want to go to. Quickly does two things. Number one is if you've got an issue or a problem that needs to be corrected, you want to make sure that you're correcting it in a timely manner. So whatever time you're wasting, money you're wasting, anything that's not going right can be done quickly. The second part is it's like anything else. If your employee is involved and they're making suggestions on what to do and how to do it, and nothing gets done and it's falling on deaf ears, then the problem is they're going to get disgruntled and they're not going to be participating. So if you want to engage your employees and you want the participation, you need to make sure that changes are made quickly. Reflect on the process. When we talk about reflecting on the process, I refer to it as the good, bad, and the ugly. You learn from your lessons. So the good, obviously, you want to repeat those. Those are good things. You want to move forward with those. Some things are all right. You look on how you can make them better. Some things are just totally bad, and you learn your lesson from that and make sure that you don't cause that same problem again going forward. So reflecting on that process, it becomes extremely important, and HR will be very much involved in that in terms of coordinating these types of reflections in the various departments, if in fact they're not already coordinated by the manager. Well, that concludes HR's role in lean implementation. I hope this was beneficial and be beneficial to you and your company moving forward. I'd like to also invite you to come to my next video, which is HR Lean Implementation, the Watson House. I think that would be very beneficial to you as well. Thank you.